I'm also honored to have the next job, which is to introduce to you all our Associate Administrator, Bob Cabana. And Bob wanted me to only use like 4 words to introduce him, but I just think that doesn't quite do it justice, all the great stuff that the Associate Administrator has done for us. So as a champion for commercial space, as a friend of many in this room, thank you for being here. And I think, you know, you're no stranger to this audience, and you've got an incredible track record of service and achievement that probably everybody here knows, but as I was preparing to introduce you, sir, I'll be honest, I was just reminded of all the great things that you've done. Day to day, obviously you're the part of the NASA's leadership team working alongside the administrator and deputy administrator and executing the important mission of NASA. But before that, previously, he served as the director of the Kennedy Space Center during what was an incredibly dynamic time period for the Space Center and really the whole Space Coast. And I think the Associate Administrator led through that in an incredible way. Before that, served as the director of Stennis Space Flight Center, chief of NASA's astronaut office, space shuttle commander, and as a colonel in the Marine Corps. So incredible service to our country, and we're so grateful for that. And that service has been recognized over and over again, no surprise. Incredible awards that Associate Administrator has been awarded, including the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Presidential Distinguished Rank Award. The nation is lucky to have Bob helping to lead our space agency. And as he wanted me to say, I think he's an okay guy doing a great job leading NASA. So thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bradley. The introduction was supposed to be shorter than the talk that I'm giving, but hey, it's great to be with you guys, and thanks to the Commercial Spaceflight Federation. This conference has certainly grown over the years, and I think it's great that we get together and talk about the outstanding future that we have. I can't think of a more exciting time for our nation's space program, but for space in general. Let's go to that first slide. This is where it all starts. NASA's got an outstanding mission statement. I mean, NASA explores the unknown in air and space, innovates for the benefit of humanity, and inspires the world for discovery. And man, we are doing that in spades right now. When I look at how successful we were last year, all the great missions, I'm going to go into some of them, but you know, even though you're not going to see a whole lot of things come to fruition this year, I think this year right now is probably one of the most critical as we set the stage for the future and how we move forward with Artemis, with exploring going back to the moon, with you know, going on to Mars eventually, and you know, our transition in low Earth orbit to commercial LEO destinations. And we'll talk more about all of that. Next slide. So the International Space Station, my goodness, anybody that is 22 years old or younger in the world has never known a time that there weren't humans living and working in space. And now, you know, we want to continue to advance science in space. The space station, I think we're very fortunate in that our Biden administration and all of us working together have advanced, extended ISS to 2030, all right? But then it's that transition that we have after that that is going to be really important. Let's go to the next slide. Commercial crew and cargo have been critical to the support of the International Space Station. And I really hope here in the very near future, we're going to be able to get our second commercial crew provider flying to the International Space Station to have that dissimilar redundancy. But operating the station through 2030 and developing a commercial viability with it is really going to be key to our future success. Next slide. You know, if I look at the crews that are up there, goodness gracious, Nicole Mann, Colonel in the Marine Corps, F-18 pilot, combat veteran. She and Koichi have done a couple of great EVAs here recently. I had the privilege to hear Nicole speak to the Native American Caucus on the Hill in the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, and she's absolutely amazing. What an outstanding role model for young women. SpaceX did a great job delivering Bob and Doug on that first crewed mission. They've had 5 crewed missions since then with crews to the International Space Station, and we're looking for the 6th mission here coming up hopefully around the 26th of this month. So the neat thing about this next one is, you know, and with all of them, we're an international partnership. And we've got a UAE astronaut going up to the International Space Station on Crew 6. And I think the international aspect of what we do is critical to our role as we move forward. we are exploring space, but we're not doing it as we've done it in the past, where it's just NASA. We're doing it in partnership with our commercial partners, but also our international partners, and that's setting the stage for how we move on to the moon. Next slide. So, I look at the commercialization of space. We've flown private astronaut missions now to the International Space Station. The Axiom 1 mission, a lot of great lessons learned on that one, but it's setting the stage for the future. As we fly these private astronaut missions, as Axiom gets a module on there, as we move toward commercial LEO destinations, this is the start. And I was in Israel last week, met with the head of the Israeli Space Agency, participated in the Ramon conference there, and Eitan Stibbe, what a great role model he is for the Israelis, and having another astronaut to follow in Ilan Ramon's footsteps. But this private astronaut mission, it meant a great deal to them, and it's another way for access for international as well as private companies to have access to the International Space Station and space. Next slide. So commercial LEO destinations, we've got 4 companies that are looking to have a commercial space station on orbit. This is the future after the International Space Station. This will allow NASA to explore beyond our home planet, all right? We want to be one of many customers. We don't want to have the cost of this entire huge International Space Station. We'd like to be able to just send astronauts up and pay for it as we go, like everyone else. And I think we are setting the stage now to really enable commercial operations in low Earth orbit. I think this is going to be critical to our future. We got another panel coming up. I'm just looking down here on who's going to be on it, but Phil McAllister is going to moderate a panel. I'm just kind of setting the stage for these detailed panels that are coming up, but you're going to hear from Kathy Leaders. I don't think Janet Cabana could make it. We got a replacement for her. Mary Lynn Dittmar from Axiom and Eric Stallmer from Voyager are going to be having a panel up here talking about this commercialization of low Earth orbit. Really important. Next slide. I can't say enough good things about the Artemis 1 mission and going back to the moon. That rocket, SLS, I've seen a lot of launches, and I left the control room at T-minus 10 minutes, and I took the administrator and deputy administrator up on the roof of the Launch Control Center. And for those of you that have seen a shuttle launch at night, it just turns nighttime into daylight, and I think it really was. It's been a while since I've seen a shuttle launch, but with 5 segment solids and 4 engines, this, to me, accelerated faster and was louder, and it was just a truly awesome experience. The Space Launch System itself, it performed right down the middle of its trajectory and its performance. It nailed it. It was done precisely. And the Orion spacecraft to the moon, how cool was that? 2 passes around the moon, coming within 80 nautical miles of the moon, going further than we've ever gone in a human-rated spacecraft beyond the moon into space, and staying up longer for a human-rated spacecraft without docking to a space station than we've ever done before, paving the way for Artemis 2 when we put crew on there and go back to the moon in 2024 and check out that vehicle before we actually go toward a landing. And we've got a panel coming up later today that's going to talk about Moon, Mars, and beyond. That's going to have Bradley Cheatham on. You just talked to him with Advanced Space, Nick Cummings, Jim Free's going to be on that one, and Brent Sherwood from Blue Origin. And I think that's going to be a great panel that's going to go into a lot of details. So ask them. Hopefully they'll get a lot of tough questions. So Artemis 1 wasn't the only mission that we sent to the moon last year. Brad, congratulations on the award from the Commercial Spaceflight Federation. But that little capstone satellite is doing an amazing job up there defining this eccentric orbit that we're going to put the gateway in. And they had some challenges along the way. And working together with NASA in the Deep Space Network, they overcame a problem with thrusters on their way to the moon, resolved it, got into that near rectilinear orbit, halo orbit that they're in, and they've had over 12 orbits now of the moon, defining that orbit, and everything's working really well. They're working through all the issues, and it's a great partnership, Bradley. I thank you so much. But what a cool satellite that was. I had the privilege of rolling that out with Bradley at the Space Symposium last year, and we had a fun time talking to the media about it, and I'm so glad to see it so successful. Next slide. So, CLPS missions. You know, we are going to the moon. It's going to be interesting to see which the first one is going to be, whether it's Astrobotics or Intuitive Machines. And Intuitive Machines has changed their landing destination. They're now going to the south pole of the moon on their first flight. But what a great partnership this is, that the Science Mission Directorate, working together with our commercial partners, investing in them, but not paying for everything, developing commercial capabilities to go to the moon. And I'm really looking forward to seeing these missions be successful for the science, the technology that we develop, the capabilities that we develop working together. And I go back to what I said in the beginning. It's these partnerships that are key to our future. It's not just NASA doing this. We're doing this in partnership with our commercial partners as well as our international partners. So they're going to a lot of different places up there on the moon. A lot of great science is going to be done, and a new capability in many areas for our nation is going to come to fruition with these CLPS missions and the services that they're going to provide. Next slide. Of course, our real goal is to get back on the lunar surface and put the first woman, have the first person of color, be able to get back with an office of astronauts that is totally different from the astronaut corps of the past, an astronaut corps that represents all of us, that we can all see ourselves in when we explore and go on to Mars. Why are we doing this? We're not doing this like we did during Apollo. It's not just the United States that's doing it, and we're not just going for a 2 or 3 day camping trip. We're going for a sustained presence, to actually stay for extended periods of time, to develop the gateway, to develop a lunar base, but to learn what we need to know to be able to go on to Mars. And I have to give our Deputy Administrator, Pam Melroy, credit for our architecture in the way we have laid it out, an objectives-based architecture with requirements that we've actually cemented into place that we are going to iterate every year. We had our first meeting down at the Kennedy Space Center. Jim Free and his team led a large group of folks going over it, helping define it, and make sure that we all agree that we're on the right path, looking at gaps. But again, it isn't just us that's doing this. If you look at the architecture and how it's laid out, there's place for NASA, there's places for commercial industry, there are places for our international partners to meet the objectives and the requirements that we need to have that sustainable presence, to learn what we need to know to be able to go on to Mars. Next slide. That gateway, you know, we've got modules that are getting ready to complete and to be launched into the orbit that's being defined by Capstone. And this will allow access anywhere on the lunar surface. Again, this is being done in partnership with our international partners. And I think it's going to be really key. It's not going to be permanently tended, but when it is tended, it's going to have capabilities to allow for robotic science, telerobotic science from gateway to the lunar surface, and it's going to provide capabilities for the crew getting to and from the lunar surface back into orbit and home, again, in partnership with our international partners. Next slide. A lunar base. You know, a lot of work needs to get done before we have a base where we can stay for a week or more at a time on the lunar surface, providing pressurized rovers, rovers for the crew to get around, habitats, and so on. And again, the whole goal in this is the in situ resource utilization. It's learning what we need to know to operate away from planet Earth for an extended period of time to develop the skills that we need to eventually go on to Mars. Next slide, the ultimate destination, right? And we've got, of course, the Perseverance rover up there. This is Ingenuity, and I think it's really cool. You got this little helicopter flying around up there, and it's paving the way for robotic operations, but also we're looking now with the Mars Sample Return mission that we're coming up for in the late 2020s to be able to actually bring samples back from Mars, using 2 helicopters based on what we've learned with the Ingenuity helicopter to actually bring samples back to the vehicle that's going to return them to Earth. Next slide. And ultimately setting up for a habitat on the Martian surface. I do have to say, although this is the ultimate goal, and I can't wait to see it happen, hopefully in my lifetime, maybe in the 2040s, I think we can make this work. We've got a lot to learn to get there. But I don't think people appreciate how challenging this is. I asked Bradley, what's the biggest thing you learned from your capstone mission? And he said, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. It looks a lot easier than what it actually ends up being. And I think that's true for all of us. In everything that we do, in every mission that we do, we work really hard to make it look easy. And we pull things off like the Artemis 1 mission flawlessly, right? And we learn from it. But this is a very challenging business that we are in. And I would be remiss if I didn't hearken back to the end of January in our days of remembrance when I tell you we're in a business that is terribly unforgiving of mistakes. And I don't want any of us to forget the lessons that we've learned from the past. This is a challenging business, and we have to create an environment where people are listened to, that we have open and honest discussion, an inclusive environment that allows us to actually, listen to people, learn from our mistakes, and not repeat them again in the future. And Mars is a harsh environment. Planet Earth is just a wonderful spaceship that we're on right now. It's a beautiful place. Going to the moon is hard. Going to Mars is going to be even harder. So it's critical that we learn to work together, that we partner, that we learn from one another, that we listen, that we develop what we need working on the lunar surface that will allow us to go on to Mars, because we need to create a presence in our solar system beyond our home planet. It's our destiny to explore. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for being in this business that we are in together. And I look forward to continued success as we work together as partners. And enjoy the panels that are coming up. Thank you.